Hey, it's that time of the week, and we've got your mailbag questions coming up, answered 100% correctly, or this is important, your money back. Not a whole lot going on. A little bit of news. I wrote this, something that Ken Hagan had mentioned, and talked to Brian Ford about it. I don't think people were necessarily, this is on their radar, but the Bucs lease at Raymond James Stadium is going to be essentially up on or before like January 31st of 2027. So we're like 11 months away. And it's a no-brainer that that they will extend that by 5 years, regardless of. I say that, I guess maybe it's their only leverage, but regardless of where they're at in terms of the renovation and stuff like that. And looking at the lease, here's the thing that I thought was amazing. So, what if I told you that their rent is going to double at Raymond James? Pretty good deal, right, for the TSA for everybody?
Well, how much is the rent?
Well, that's the thing. Once it doubles, it'll be $7 million a year.
They pay $3.5 million for the stadium. That's it, a year?
Yes, that's it, man. That $7 million will buy you a decent backup quarterback these days, right? I mean, they got a pretty good deal, is what I'm thinking. Pretty good deal.
You can't even get a college quarterback for that much. I mean,
I know. I know. You get a whole ballpark and 50% of the revenue it's in it. So, hey, good for them, man. Leverage is king. But eventually they'll come knocking. And the one thing Commissioner Ken Hagan said was like, we're not giving away the Bucs money to the Rays. We got that earmarked already, even though they haven't had any discussions. It's going to be, $1 billion with a B to renovate that baby. And I'm guessing they're going to probably need or hope to get 600 or 700 million from whether it's the county investment tax or something like that, but we'll see. Anyway, check it out, Tampa Bay Times, TampaBay.com. All right, we got some mailbag questions today, some pretty good ones, I think. Let's kind of weed through those.
All right, we'll start with Steve in Oxford, England emailed us.
Oxford, ho, ho, ho.
Yes.
That's where you went to school, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Thanks again for your consistent hard work producing daily podcast. You should have had some sort of trophy for hitting 2,000 last summer.
Good point.
We rightly criticize the Bucs defense when we look at the 2025 regular season. But in their last 6 games, apart from the Atlanta disaster, their points allowed figures would have been good enough had the offense scored 25 a game. Those 6 games followed Baker's injury against the Rams. I know the Bucs always say no excuses, but can't someone just admit now that the season is over if Baker is playing hurt? Otherwise, we have to conclude that he's an inconsistent quarterback, and I just don't think that's the case. I think he's an excellent QB.
I think he makes a great point. When I look back at those games, and you've got and you just needed to win one, right? You just needed to win one, and you've got a 14-point lead over Atlanta with 9 minutes to play. And the only way they get enough possessions is if Baker Mayfield throws a fourth quarter interception, which he did. And of course, there were 19 accepted penalties against Atlanta in that game. It's inexcusable to give up some of the plays on defense they gave up to Kirk Cousins and the guys. I mean, I think Kyle Pitts had maybe his best game of his life. I think he had 3 touchdowns. They couldn't cover him. Obviously, couldn't stop Bijan Robinson. They basically beat him with 2 players and then a statue at quarterback. So the defense was certainly had its fingerprints on that loss. But to his point, I'm not sure he's wrong. Like, I thought that as good as Baker played, getting them off to a 5-1 and a 6-2 start, that's how poorly I think he played during the stretch when they turned that around and went the other way. Because and I do think that so much of it was injury, right? Like, we watched this guy. He was on the report with 8 different injuries last year. 8. And none worse than the shoulder injury against the Rams, which was his left shoulder, granted, but that affects your throwing, and the rotation of your torso and how much velocity. You point that left shoulder towards your target when you throw a football or any ball, and I think that between that, the oblique injury, I think, took velocity. You didn't see the deep shots that you saw early in the year when he was really launching. I mean, Baker has really one of the stronger arms in the National Football League. And you wouldn't think that looking at him because he's all but, a little bit over 6 foot. But if he stands there flat-footed and just like in warm-ups can just toss it 50 yards with velocity. And so to see that sort of come off. Now, he's never going to admit that he was too hurt to play. That's his competitive nature. But he went 3 games where he didn't even attempt to run the football, which is a big part of his game. You remember, the 4th and 10 in Houston, the 3rd and 17 against San Francisco. Like, this is a guy that when it really mattered, he laid it all on the line, and he'd go get the first down. And I think he paid a price for doing it. I know he did in Houston. He hurt his knee that day, but you didn't see him do that, for about a month. So I don't think he's wrong. Now, the defense, it just doesn't have enough playmakers, right? Like, there's no way around it. Antoine Winfield Jr. was called a babysitter by Todd Bowles at some point. They had injuries, obviously, to Jamel Dean. The linebackers weren't good all year. You didn't get any pressure outside. Hassan Reddick was pretty much a wasted of $14 million. So it's not like you had playmakers that could, affect the game that much. But I think if Baker had been able to maintain, that was a ridiculous level he was at to start the season. But if he would have been able to stay healthy, I think it's a different outcome, especially since you just needed one more game, one more win. And he had, a 3 or 4 fourth quarter interceptions down the stretch that cost him in those games. Now, how do you fix it? Well, every year they talk to Baker about making better decisions and trying to protect himself, and you can't coach out, the aggressiveness out of him. That's what he does. That's what he's so good at. You love that about him, but he does have to make smarter decisions about when he pushes the envelope and things like that. So I don't know. I'm not willing to say that Baker's a bad quarterback. I think, again, I think he was affected, and much like, we saw a Super Bowl where, Drake May got a painkiller shot in his shoulder, right, that week, and wasn't on the injury report, which is ridiculous. His right throwing shoulder. You cannot convince me, and they took him off the injury report the final week before the Super Bowl. You cannot convince me that didn't greatly affect Drake May. I mean, he missed some very easy throws that he would normally make, and whether you're numbing something can have an adverse effect because you don't have that quick twitch and all that stuff. So I think that all of that affected Baker. I talked to Tristan Wirfs, and he said that it was a joke that he went back in that Rams game. He said he got hurt way early in the Rams game. He went back out there, couldn't do anything, couldn't lift his arm, and eventually didn't play the second half. So he makes a good point, Steve. I mean, if Baker was healthy, they win at least one more game. I think he plays more consistent, but you can't absolve the defense either. It's just that I agree with him. I don't want to say that Baker is just a bad quarterback. I don't think that's the case.
No, I think if you look at the first half of the season, it shows you, how much better he was. And we know
he's fresh.
We know he got hurt, and then since then he wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And so, is he healthy enough to play? Yes, obviously. But, was he healthy enough to be the quarterback he was the first half of the season? Obviously it wasn't, based on, seeing, looking back now, we know that.
Yeah.
So, but the defense, the hard part is the defense points per game wise was okay this year. I mean,
24 or something.
If they averaged offensively what they averaged the year before, it would have been fine.
Sure.
The problem is you give away a 14-point lead, and you give away 4th or 3rd and 28, and it's not like you're going to give up yards, you're going to give up points. But when you need the stop,
the situational
they
stuff,
weren't able to get it. Like when you absolutely need to hold on to that lead, they couldn't do it. When you 3rd and 28, there's no way they should get a first down. They get 14 on 3rd down, another 14 on 4th, and boom, it's first down.
I mean, that game of all the games, and I thought they should have beat Miami too because it wasn't a very good football team. But that Atlanta game was the death knell. I mean, that was, you couldn't come back from that, and they had chance after chances where Mike Evans came back, after breaking his clavicle. He had 130-something yards. I was already right about what a hero that guy was. Unbelievable game. Brought all the energy, all the juice. And he leaves the field screaming, 3rd and 28, man, 3rd and 28. And that's how everybody felt, So it was on the defense. But even at 3rd and 28, and there's no excuse for not getting off the field, they're not in that situation if Baker doesn't throw a fourth quarter pick, which he did in like 3 or 4 of the last games. So, it's some of it's on him too. And every year they talk to him about, hey man, you got to protect yourself and take care of the football. I mean, 2 years ago when he had a pretty damn good year, 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns, he led the league in interceptions. I mean, he led the league. He had 18. And last year he had some fumbles as well. So it's important to take care of the football. And if you look at the playoffs, Sam Darnold wasn't like Superman throughout the postseason, but he didn't turn it over one time, and he allowed his defense to put him in good position. So he's got to get better. I think he knows it. And hopefully Zach Robinson can put him in better positions and they can try to keep him healthy. I think, look, the offensive line from week 1 was beat up. You don't have Tristan Wirfs for 3 weeks, and then you don't have Luke Gettige after week 2, and then you lose Cody Mauch for the season in week 2. And it's just, that will affect the quarterback too. If the quarterback doesn't trust his protection, especially inside at his feet, and they had 2 new guards, in there every week, he'll start seeing ghosts, and I think that Baker wasn't very comfortable after a few weeks, even though you could argue he played better when they were kind of nicked up and Tristan Wirfs wasn't there. But we'll see how they bounce back, man. Interesting year. And I heard some debate, Steve, about this. Like, would you, if you were the Bucs, go ahead and just let Baker play out this contract? He's got 1 more year left on that 3-year, $100 million deal, much of which they already paid him up front for this last season. Or would you say, we'll probably make a better deal if we just extend him now than waiting until after the end of the season? I think they're doing the right thing. I mean, remember he came here on a 1-year, $4 million contract and then parlayed that into the $100 million deal. So I think, a guy playing for his contract. I mean, obviously, if he does well, he's not going to want to leave, right? If he has success, and if he has success, he's going to get paid, and he's going to get paid here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the debate of whether you re-sign him now or not. I mean, part of it is what's the number? Like, what number could you get him at right now?
Good point. Yeah.
And does Baker want to settle for that, or would he rather? The Bucs may want to wait and see, and if he doesn't play well, then the number's lower. But Baker may want to wait and see and raise the number higher.
Mm-hmm.
It's
you absolutely could do that.
It's a risk on both sides, whether you sign now or not.
Sure.
So, and part of this may be, the other part of this is how safe is Todd Bowles and how safe is Jason Licht?
Yeah.
And re-signing him. And if you have questions about him, you may want to wait till the end of the year, because if you want to change philosophies or change a lot of things in the organization, that could change stuff too.
Right. I mean, you might be changing quarterbacks after a year, depending on how he plays.
But I mean, you could be changing coaches and GMs.
Coaches,
too.
GM, sure. The whole direction could be different. Absolutely.
I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just saying that.
No, but that's football.
What are the Glazers thinking at this point?
Yeah.
Because, re-signing a quarterback, while it's Jason Licht and Todd Bowles' call, the ownership will have a say in that.
Sure they will. And if they had a bad year and you were drafting high, next year is supposedly a pretty good year in the draft for quarterbacks. It's not so much this year, but next year,
but I don't think they plan on drafting 15th again. I think they hope to be drafting, 32nd,
20s, 30s, yeah,
at least lower 20s. I mean,
absolutely. So you wouldn't be in range for one of those guys anyway. Yeah, it's I think the prudent thing will be, let him play out his deal. I think he loves Tampa. He's not going to want to go anywhere else, even if he has a good year. And look, you're happy to pay him, but plus they're only about $18 to $24 million under the cap now. They could create probably another 30, 40, $50 million by extending some contracts that they recently signed with Tristan Wirfs or Gettige or Antoine, some of those guys, but not a lot. And remember, what are you doing with Mike Evans? Is he coming back at 20 and a half? Is he coming back at 24?
Well, and presumably you need some free agents to help on the defensive side of the ball.
That's right. So you start spending money on Mike and where your biggest needs are on defense, can you bring in, a Max Crosby, right? If you make a trade, can you bring in a Trey Hendrickson as a free agent if that's what you choose to do? So yeah, a lot of needs, not a ton of money. Your quarterback's under contract. It's a team friendly deal, even at $33 million. And it's certainly going to be a little bit more if he plays well next year. So I think he plays. I think I think he'll love having that chip on his shoulder. He'll love playing for his future, and I just think that's the way it goes. But yeah, I look, the defense was the bigger of the two evils, but down the stretch, Baker was as much a problem as points, and together they just couldn't win one more game. That's all they really needed to get into the playoffs. I don't think they would have gone very far. I mean, to be honest with you, I think they probably lose in the first round. But that's why you get in the tournament. You never know. So we'll see. At least they have a quarterback. At least they have a plan. I tell you what, it would help them also to find a good backup so that if Baker does get hurt, you can sit on him a little bit and say, look, man, we want you healthy, or healthier for the remainder of the season, and keep putting you out here.
But Rick,
beat up.
In the words of your good friend Tom Moore, we don't practice F.
It's true. Yeah, number six get hurt, we're effed, and we don't practice effed. That's right. And that's what he would tell you, too. God bless him, Tom Moore. Shout out up there in Carolina.
All right, Craig in Vegas tweeted us. He says, Bucs' need for impact pass rushers is top of the list this offseason, with linebacker help as well. Regarding pass rushers and having the same defensive coordinator, why would an elite pass rush player come to the Bucs to drop in coverage half of his snaps? Seems like last resort of a choice.
Well, the same reason all free agents go to teams, primarily, not exclusively, but primarily for the money. Like
what?
if you
what?
Yeah,
You're kidding me.
No, more often than not, 9 out of 10 doctors say that when it comes to free agency, I can be talked into any team so long as that number is pretty big at the end of my check. And some teams, maybe even the Bucs, have to overpay, right? More so than a contending team, let's say, to get that player, and that's his leverage. Okay, he's maybe not going to the Seattle Seahawks or the Buffalo Bills, but he'll come to Tampa where it's no state income tax, lots of sunshine, and that the grass and the money is really green. You may have to overpay a little bit. That's it. There's no secret sauce to free agency. They'll all talk about, Larry Foote's my guy. I had him in Arizona. This defense is great. We're going to go to the Super League. Everybody's going to say that. And maybe you can be. They also believe this, that wherever they go, if you're a free agent and you get paid, you feel like you're going to turn it around. Like you're the missing piece. You're not expecting to go in there and the team lose. You're expecting to help push them over the top. So that's why. I mean, but really, it's not. Let's not overthink it. It's money. I mean, and
the coaching staff, the city, the this,
sure,
all impacts if your financial offers are very comparable.
If it's apples to apples, that's right.
Yeah. You're within, a couple 100,000. Well, the state tax here, okay,
it could even be more than that with no state income. Sure,
this team has a better defensive unit as a whole that I want to be a part of.
Right,
but someone pays you $5 million a year more, like you're probably not turning that down.
And look, if you've got the guys on the edge that can get to the quarterback, I promise you Todd Bowles will not be dropping them in coverage. I know he did that a lot, right, with Hassan and with Yaya, too much with Yaya, and he'll tell you that. But I think that's because he felt he had to trick some people with his whole defense was predicated on pressure or the illusion of pressure. And as Rondy Barber said, the problem with the defense is, if you either bring somebody from another position, and it can be any of the 11, or you drop them out of it, and it's the illusion of that pressure, other guys on that defense have to cover for them, right? So, if Anton Winfield Jr. is blitzing, then I've got to rotate around and find a way to cover the flat or cover the deep middle or whatever. And it puts so much emphasis on the other 10 guys that if one guy misses his fit in the run game or doesn't get deep enough in his drop, you've got a big play, right? If the pass rush doesn't get home, best thing to do is if you get the right edge rusher. If I'm one of those dudes, I'm going after the quarterback, and that's what they're going to pay me to do, and that's what they're going to let me do. right? Because I'm going to have production. Nobody makes a guy drop into coverage if he's putting the quarterback on his backside. I didn't see Simeon Rice do that very often. So that's the same thing with Todd Bowles. He'd love nothing better than to put a guy on the edge and just say, sick him, But that wasn't the case. It hasn't been the case. And so he's tried to dial up all these, schemes. And I agree with Rondi that they don't have something that they can just default to, like the cover two, where, okay, if we do nothing else, even if they know what we're in, we're going to be able to read our keys and play fast and make plays because we have a default defense that we all know very well and we can run it, and we run it better than you can run your offense, and they don't have that. Too much of what Bowles does is tricking guys and the illusion of pressure and his chess pieces. He likes to move guys around and all that's great. When it works, but if you have the horses, I promise you, and Todd Bowles has said this, if I got 4 down linemen that can rush the passer, I won't blitz anybody. I don't need to. That's my dream. I can sit back and play 7-on-5, and that's what they'd hope to get to. So I don't think the scheme would be something that someone would be put off and say, well, if I come there, they're gonna make me drop. And they're paying you to rush the passer. They're going to give you plenty of ops, plenty of opportunities, but you got to earn that rush, right? Like you got to win on first and second down. You don't just say, well, I'm coming in here and I'm going to, get 10 sacks or 12 sacks. It's like, well, first you got to stop the run and get them in 3rd and long. So you have premier pass rush opportunities. And that's what they didn't have last year. They were trailing in games. The best thing for your defense is to get a lead and make a team one-dimensional in the 4th quarter. That's where your sacks come from. But they just weren't able to do that. So I wouldn't worry if I'm a free agent. I got guys dropping in coverage from the outside linebacker. I'd be like, look, I do one thing really well if you're Max Crosby or something like that, and they're going to let me do that more often than anything else. All right, we got more mailbag questions for you. Hey, first, get on down to Breitling Boutique. You know where that is, International Plaza Mall, best mall in Tampa Bay for my money, and it's in the center of the mall, 2nd floor. That's where you're going to find the Breitling Boutique. The Breitling Company has been making the best Swiss watches now for over 140 years. They've been in International Plaza for going on 6 years now. Tremendous customer service. If you don't know anything about watches, don't worry, because you're going to go in there, spend some time. They're going to pour you a drink, man. Take an hour or so, learn about their beautiful timepieces, whether it's the men's watches, the chronomats, the Navitimers. They have women's watches for your wife, your girlfriend. These are sports watches, incredibly beautiful, really durable. They hold up well. Whole bunch of different colored wristbands you can choose from. And you will notice as you approach the store on the left side there in the window, there's a display case and a little shield you'll recognize with the letters NFL. That's because while supplies last, they've been celebrating the NFL's 104th anniversary with 32 different team watches. There's 32 teams in the NFL. Each team has its own watch. These are chronomat watches, unbelievably beautiful. They've got the team colors in the face of the watch, the logo inside. You have to see them. They're going to go fast, but make sure you get down there soon. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza, and let them know you heard about it here on Sports Day Tampa Bay.
All right, Corey had emailed. He says, long time, first time, but I have 2 questions for you.
We'll be gentle.
1, with Jason Light's deep dive into his draft process a few years back and the famous Levante David silhouette in the draft room, do you think his prioritization with certain players' character is actually a detriment to this team? The team has been missing accountability and someone with a meaner character that may improve this team, i.e. a Sap, a Sue, JPP characters. And then a second question, which GM has a better process with keeping the team successful? Julian Breezewall moving on from older players, or Jason Light's apparent desire to hold on to them? Love the show. Best podcast in America, not just Florida.
God, I love this person. Who is it again?
Corey,
shout out, my man. That's awesome stuff. Okay, let's take these as he said it. I've thought about the, who is that man, right? The silhouette that they have in their draft room, which is indeed taken from Levante David. And I think the traits that they have listed there, right? And I can't remember what they are, but it's accountability and all these sort of things. A lot of them character, but also, toughness and that sort of thing. I think that's what you want in every football player, and I think it's admirable to try to find, a Levante David like player. Now, not to have revisionist history, but, we're looking at Levante David through the lens of the last couple years. Understand this. He's got a Hall of Fame resume. I mean, this dude, not only his longevity, but like he's been a playmaker. If Luke Kuechly, who just got into the Pro Football Hall of Fame on his second try, is going to go to Canton, I promise you, they were drafted the same year, that Levante David deserves to be there one day too. Not saying he's going to be first ballot or anything like that, but he's played, first of all, a heck of a lot longer. Kuechly ended up with concussions and had to quit playing after about 7-8 years. But Levante is a beast, right? When he had his legs, when he could come downhill, when he could shoot the gap, he could, he could rush the quarterback. He could drop into coverage. He could cover tight ends. And remember what he did to Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl. I mean, Kelce couldn't catch a pass after a while. Levante just shut him down. But Levante David of last year, or the last 2 years maybe, not quite the same guy. I think we forget just how extraordinary he has been throughout his career. So I'm not ready to say that, Levante is personality wise, okay. When you hear him in interviews, he's very soft spoken. He doesn't speak up a lot, but when he does, it carries a lot of weight. I mean, that's just who he is as a person, and I think you can lead a lot of different ways, right? You can be the rah guy. You can be the guy that doesn't say much, but when you do, it has lots of weight. You can be that guy like Levante would pull guys individually. He liked to talk to players when they came into the building as rookies, and teach them how to take care of their bodies and how to study. And he's a pro's pro. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Levante isn't what you want, because if you had 11 Levante Davids, you would have a great team. But I do understand the perception that, and we've talked about it, they need some badasses on this team. You got to have a Warren Sapp. You got to have, that.
I think they miss Ryan Jensen still.
Ryan Jensen's a great example. Yeah, the guy that will bring attitude, but not just attitude, but good play first and foremost, but also has some snarl. You know what I mean? Like this game, look, the last guy on the roster, like I always chuckle when people say, "Oh, this guy's soft." No, he's not. He's in the National Football League. He didn't get here because he's soft. There are guys that are tougher than others, for sure. There are guys that have play with more attitude, for sure. And some of them are reckless to a point. But I do think that the Bucs absolutely need that guy, whether like the Hardy Nickerson, the Warren Sapp types, the guys that everybody's a little bit low-key afraid of. Like, if I don't do my job, I don't have to worry about the coach yelling at me. I got to worry about the guy in the huddle yelling at me, like he might split my wig, right, in the huddle because he's so ticked off at what I didn't do or what assignment I just missed. And that's the way Sapp was. Sapp has everything happening behind him, but he'd go back to the huddle and say, "What happened? Who's that guy? Whose guy was that?" And he would spit nails at him. So you need that. So I'm not going to say you wouldn't take 11 Levante Davids, but you also need the snarl, man. You got to find somebody. And the point, and all we need to know, they told you that. They told you that when they signed just Jason Pierre-Paul, who had not played in 2 years, right, off to go on a practice squad, not because they thought he could play, but because they thought maybe he could bring some snarl and some attitude, some swagger to the outside linebacker room and to the defense. Now, it was a joke, right? Because, I mean, as great of a player as he was, if he's not productive, if he's not playing, those guys don't, half of them were 10 years, 12 years younger than him. So I don't think it worked, right? But you need guys that are both productive and can be your leaders and can, get one or two of those, I'm not so sure what this guy's going to do, but he's, he's a little half crazed out there. I think you need that. And that's not Levante's personality, but that's not to say that when he played, he wasn't the best guy on the field either. So somewhere in there is the mama bear. But as a whole, as a group, as a defense, yeah, you better find some badasses out there that teams have to deal with, right? That they're a problem, right? Whether it's
but I don't know. I don't know if Jason Light's draft, the character thing, is really about not finding those guys. It's avoiding guys like Pierce in Atlanta, who's now
perfect example. And, that's a great example.
And many had him off his board. I'm assuming the Bucs he was off the board because he had character issues before.
I would agree. Yeah.
I don't think it's
great
them
example.
Trying to find every
Boy
player
Scouts.
just like Levante David. I think it's avoiding, and the Bucs have had a lot of those in their past, and even some in Jason Light's early years as GM. Drafted some guys, questionable character that didn't work out. It's not the snarl, the grit, the badassness. It's more this guy might get arrested and we've got issues.
We can't trust him.
Yeah. We can't trust him. Who knows if he's going to be available?
That's
all that
right.
stuff.
That's right. No, that's a perfect example.
I don't think it's so much like they want
Boy Scouts.
Yeah, for lack of a better word, for all 11 guys or 53 on your roster, but it's about avoiding the guys that cause the issues because of the external problems.
No, 100% agree with you. And I think that's the kind of character you're talking about. Things like character. They want that character in the player. And you're right. I mean, look, Antoine Winfield Jr., who's an all-pro, is the nicest guy who smiles the most in the locker room and doesn't say squadouche. But put him on the field, he's the Tasmanian devil if you put him in the right positions. Now, he didn't make as many plays last 2 years. 2 years ago, he's hurt. Last year, I think he was having to, cover up some stuff behind him. They didn't trust what was going to happen. But, Leroy Selman, the greatest player in franchise history for my money, soft-spoken, like gentle giant, like just, if you've ever heard Leroy speak. So you're right. That's exactly right. It's a good way of putting it is that, character is what they're looking for. Not that they're not looking for that other component, but it's more about who can you trust? Who can you trust to be prepared on Sunday that's not going to go out? Yeah. They used to say this, like, there's some guys you draft and you got to be worried that on Friday night he's going to follow everybody out to the bars if the team asks him to go, he's going to be that guy that kind of follows everybody. That's one guy. The guy you don't want to draft is the guy that is going out anyway and is going to take 2 or 3 with him.
Yep. So,
avoid that guy. And that's what they try to do. So yeah, it's you make the right point. It's not that they want, someone not to be up in people's faces. It's just they want to be able to trust the character. And if they can get the character of Levante David and the player that Levante David was, you've got something.
All right, we'll switch topics a little bit here. And we've got plenty more mailbag questions we'll get to tomorrow, too.
Yep.
So Thad had emailed. Says the new Rays ownership group seems pretty in touch with the community and making the Bay Area better for all parties involved. They seem pretty holistically civic-minded. With the HCC site seeming like the ultimate destination for a new Rays stadium, is it plausible that Babby and Zablewski has approached the Glazers in private and could be working together, possibly with certain key politicians, to make sure funding is available for the needs of both organizations? If the ultimate goal is making that area of Southdale Mabry into a thriving destination spot, it seems like working together rather than separate might make some sense. Future revenues from a new destination spot could also be a source of funding for both stadiums. Of course, they probably can't say that publicly, at least not at this point.
Okay, now you're treading on an area that's something that I've heard and has been denied, at least in the form that I presented it, but it makes perfect sense to me. If you look at that area, right, from MLK to Spruce, right, both sides of Dale Mabry, they've got issues if they're going to plop another Rays baseball stadium there that holds 33,000. And the biggest thing is parking.
And a whole mixed-use development thing that you're attracting people all the time.
I mean, it's roads, right? It's like, so you're going to turn left off of Dale Mabry or right, depending. You're going to go east towards the airport. I'm sorry, west towards the airport. And how big is that road? Well, right now it's a 2-lane road. What are the access points to that new Rays stadium? Where are those cars going if you have a football and a baseball game in the same day? So there's logistical issues, and to your point, if you're not just building a ballpark, but you also have mixed use, apartments, restaurants, etc., that's going to attract more people, whether there's a game or not. That's a whole new kettle of fish, as they say. So you got to look at the infrastructure. What's the power grid? Like there's things that you and I don't necessarily think about, but planners have to, right? And that's where the cost overruns come and who's taking on and all that. Okay, so I've asked the Bucs, how do you feel? Kind of like, how do you feel about this? Like, they're going to be your neighbors, man. They're right there, and you guys want to do some of this stuff too. And of course, the Bucs do. I mean, the Bucs have land where they park cars right now. They would love to see some development on that side of Dale Mabry, right? And probably are planning on it. And whether you can partner with a developer and help raise funds for the stadium, that's all part of the sort of the new way that these stadiums are built, through public-private sort of investments. And I think the Bucs are definitely looking into doing a similar thing. Why wouldn't they if they got the land? Again, parking being the biggest issue, but what I've been told is that, at least from the Bucs standpoint, the more the merrier, right? Like, they're not opposing the Rays being where they're going or building up that area, because if you're, their philosophy is, well, rising tide, right? More customers year round, right? We play mostly in the fall. They play mostly in the summer. And, if they've got restaurants and apartments and things like that, the more people that are in that area for whatever event it is, the more that's going to visit, their side of Dale Mabry. So I think now, as far as the partnership goes, I have asked about it. I've been told it's not happening, but I've also heard that there's, it makes sense, right? It makes sense if you had like a third entity where the Rays and the Bucs or someone with those franchises kind of work together, right, with a developer on that side of it, right, on the development side, not so much on the stadium sides, but on the development side of it. Whether that comes to pass or not, I don't know, but I've checked into that very prospect, and at least so far, there's no new corporations that's been formed that would indicate that. But in the macro, the Bucs at least have told me that they're rooting for the Rays to get. Now, they don't want them to take their community investment tax money, and it's pretty sure Caden Hagan said they're not going to. Whatever that number is, he feels like they have kind of an idea of what that will be, and they're not going to give it away to the Rays. So they definitely, Hillsborough County, their priority is the Buccaneers. No question about it. They're going to keep the Bucs, they're going to keep the Lightning, and if they can get the Rays settled and situated, that's fantastic, but not at the expense of those other two franchises, especially the Bucs. So we'll see. There'll have to be some, I mean, you can't do this in a vacuum, because anything they build over there is going to affect the Bucs and vice versa, and parking is one of the biggest issues. We've written stories about it, traffic patterns, parking, like all of that. How do you do it? Right. So a lot of things, a lot of hurdles to clear, but it's a good question. I did check in. I heard that maybe they were looking to form something like that. If it's going to happen, it hasn't happened yet. All right, we'll get to more mailbags tomorrow. Hey, send yours in when you get a chance. You can do that on Twitter or X at SportsDayTB. You can reach me on X at MLStroud, or my email address is rStroud@tampabay.com. More Olympics coming up. Lots of the hockey, the USA and Canada, both in action today. Looking forward to that. And what else we got?
Rays continue
Rays
workouts
baseball,
down in
yeah.
Port Charlotte. I mean, spring training game's about a week away now.
It's so fast. As soon as they report, it's like, bam, we're going to play some games, which is
Yep.
cool. So baseball is here.
Well, they're going to play some games, but it's not going to be anybody you recognize in them. But, you know.
No, but so what? It's baseball, you know. That'll be cool. So, yeah, lots to talk about. Make sure you get back here. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. That's where you're going to find the NFL watches, all 32 teams while supplies last. They have watches for your wife, your girlfriend as well. It's Breitling Boutique. Let them know you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Thanks for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.